Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this online writing class. And we will be analyzing and speaking about the short story today and how we create short stories and the best way to do so. My name is Charles E.J. Moulton, and I'm very happy to be here. I'm the author of 20 books. There are poetry collections, for instance, this one, Heaven is a Feeling. 111 coffee moments. I have a fantasy trilogy out, The Haunted Kingdom. This is the first part. Shadows of the Realm. There's short story anthologies. For instance, When Your Spirits Climb. It's actually a Gershwin quote. This short story collection. And for the lovers of sensual art, this erotic story collection, Turn Me On, 39 exclusive erotic stories. And I'm also the author of 250 essays and articles and pieces published online or published in international literary magazines. I've also written for newspapers and the like. First off, some book tips for all you short story writers and writers of prose and essays and books and stuff. Writer's Digest is definitely worth a read and a buy. There's countless wonderful essays and articles in there by also people who have been successful self-publishing. How to manage your books, what to think of when you're writing to an editor, also in picking an editor, why an editor is important, and also writing tips and so on. Writer's Digest, it's a big book every year. The most important people to write, literary magazines of all kinds, where you can find them and what to send, the websites and all of those kind of things. Writer's Digest. Another one is a book here. This is called The Hero's Journey, Christopher Fogler. That's the guy. And his work, The Writer's Journey, is actually mythic structure for writers, and it's his 12 piece journey is actually the very essence of every Hollywood movie ever written and ever, brought out into the world. Star Wars, Indiana Jones, even Ghostbusters or Ghost, Titanic, all of them. And it's the hero's journey that goes from a person or the hero, he or she, or it, that lives in an ordinary world and gets confronted with something not ordinary, out of the ordinary, something extraordinary, and first denies it, but then through circumstance actually is brought into a situation where he's actually forced to take that journey. And there he meets the mentor, and this mentor gives him tools and ways how to go into that challenge and face the unknown. And when he goes into this new country or this new situation, he meets tricksters, he meets allies, he meets enemies, he meets friends, all kinds of people that characters he's never ever met before. He doesn't know how to deal with, which actually lets him become a different and more better person. And it leads him to the inmost cave, the center of the challenge, the center of the problem where he has to face this thing. There's the Night of the Lost Dark Souls, where he thinks that he's given up, which is actually right after this, Night of the Lost Dark Soul is actually where he goes into a new, character-driven, light, where he actually gets power from unknown sources, and faces the challenge and goes out with a victory. That's the basic structure of the 12-part mythical structure for writers, and that's what books are actually mostly about, and the story. It's the three-act story, and all stories have that kind of structure. They come in incredibly different forms, but we have, the ordinary world, the extraordinary world, and then you have the problem. You have the ordinary world, you have the problem, and the solving of the problem, getting out of the problem. And the second act is actually the most interesting, because it's the actual, that's where the drama takes place, where the challenge is. The first trilogy of Star Wars, we have The Empire Strikes Back, which is actually the darkest part of the trilogy. That's that's the book, and I can actually recommend this for anybody who's interested in writing novels. Maybe you already have that book. There's a few pieces of information that I would like to tell you here, and you're all writers listening to this, so some of the information that I give you might actually be information that you already know, but maybe there's something new for you. Write. That's the very first thing. Write a lot. There's assignments, for instance, in writing classes, where the students are taught every day to write 5 pages of anything. Train of thought. Just start and write whatever comes into mind for 5 pages every single day. And that's a good assignment, because you're actually teaching your soul, teaching your mind, teaching your brain to just write whatever comes up. The next thing that I would like to advise you to do is to read a lot. To read a lot what writers are writing, but not only what they're writing, but how they're writing. Try to analyze what the writers are doing. If you have, a writer that you like very much, Stephen King or, John Grisham or whatever, that you try to see what it is that they're doing and why they're doing what they're doing, and how their storyline is how they're working. And those 2 authors that I mentioned, John Grisham and Stephen King, they say the same thing. They say, keep the reader guessing. Don't reveal everything too soon. That's a very good tip. And one thing that John Grisham says is, you know something that the reader does not know. And you make that pretty clear in the very beginning. You know something that they don't know. And the reader keeps on turning the pages saying, hey, I want to know this. The character itself. And that is the thing. The character, that is also what Christopher Fogler says in his book, The Hero's Journey. The character is actually discovering the world while the reader is discovering it. So he's in a situation, maybe this guy is walking on his normal way to work from his country house to the inn that he works in. And it's a way that he walks every single day. And suddenly, one morning, something out of the ordinary happens, and you start the whole action through when he's, at the side of the road, sees a strange man he's never seen before. He knows everybody in this village. So he sees a man that's, digging a hole. And he's very bleak, and he's dressed in black. He has a hat and a shovel. And it even looks like he's, burying a body. And then you don't see that guy anymore. So that's that's a beginning mystery, you know. That's like, what is this? You know, and you start the story. If you're writing a horror story or a mystery story, that's a great beginning, you know. This normal world, and the character, you know, gets into this strange situation where you say, where you would, you know, if you had an experience like that, you would go, oh my God, what's that? You know, something completely out of the ordinary happens. Eventually, of course, you'll have to reveal it. Well, the person, the character in the story discovers the situation as you discover it, as the reader discovers it. You know, it's like step by step. And a good way to do that is to stick to true to the emotion, that you're in the emotion and you're telling it from your emotional standpoint. You know, you could actually include stuff, or you can tell it from a you know, kind of a perspective of things that you've experienced yourself. You know, you could take dramatic situations that you've experienced yourself that you are emotionally attached to, and then you could change the names, change the places, change, you know, if you had a breakup in your life, right? You can tell the story of the breakup. Maybe the breakup actually brought you closer to finding the husband or the wife that you are married to today. You can change the names, you can change the places, you can change the profession of the people. You know, if you start with the dramatic situation happening and you're actually telling your own story, you know, then it becomes very interesting. So write what you know. Write what you know. That is an interesting way to do it, and avoid Harry the Explainer. I think that's actually a quote from Christopher Vogler out of his Hero's Journey. Avoid Harry the Explainer. George went to work. He sat down by his computer, and then a very pretty lady came in and said, "Hey, you want a cup of coffee?" You know, avoid Harry the Explainer, showing actions. Tell the reader what you're feeling or what the character is feeling. Get right to the emotional content. Why? Not just how, but why. Why is it? Why? Or how is the character feeling? You know, if you start with a dramatic conflict, that's quite interesting in a short story, because you're dealing here in a short story format. You're dealing with a very, very concise format. You know, it's shorter than a book. You know, you have you know, from 7,000 words on 10,000, you're dealing with maybe a novella. You know, a novelette. But in the concise short story format, you're dealing with a quite concise, and the shorter it is, of course, the more honest and the more detailed it has to be. And there we have an important part of short storytelling, the details. And really go into detail. And one mixture that I can really recommend is attention to detail and listening to music. Mood music is great. There's wonderful YouTube mood music. You're listening to these wonderful mood sounds. You know, if you're writing a horror story or a mystical story, be very honest to what kind of story you're about to write, and then choose the mood music to that story. If you listen to music, inspiring music that inspires you, and if your intention to detail to what the character is smelling, seeing, hearing, feeling, touching, you know, then you have a great mixture. You know, start like in a horror story, somebody running through the forest. You know, he doesn't know what's behind him. Maybe it's a dog, maybe it's a werewolf, maybe it's a vampire, you know, some sort of thing that's happening, you know, the unknown, Now, these are all stories that have been written loads of times. There's nothing new under the sun. But, you know, you have this situation that is, you know, that everybody's talked about, you know, but it's from your perspective. So it's new. And that's the interesting part. And the attention to detail is important. I've written a story which is also here in Poets Unplugged. And also my dearest thanks to Sophia Behal for giving me this assignment to do this online writing class. And it's also in Poets Unplugged. It's also in the website. Tabula rasa is a Latin expression for a new beginning, and it starts with Kenny, a successful teenage novelist that lost his girlfriend because he was a workaholic. He just spent his whole time working. And he lost his girlfriend, and he's trying to cope with this by just trying to calm down. And the whole story starts with 3 hours. That's how long Kenny had sat, you know, sitting on the porch. That's, and then he sees the geese forming V formations, and their V formations actually being reflected in the lake, in his lake, in the mansion that he has. Or he's sitting there with his coffee, and the coffee is getting cold. And, you know, every half hour he refills the cup, but by the time he drinks the coffee, it's cold. So I'm actually establishing a situation where, you know, either Kenny has lost his power, or he has lost his will to live, or he's trying to find something. At one point, you know, Kenny sees the sun's reflection in the lake and the reflection in the water, you know, glittering in his eye, and his glittering eye being actually reflected in the coffee. So that's my way of saying there's many factors that come together in creating light, you know. And that light, of course, is the memory of his lost girlfriend. So, and everything you introduce in a short story, make sure that what you introduce actually also gets used. So if you introduce a rose, make sure that that rose has a meaning, that it's not just there, you know, that it, you know, try to untie or try to, you know, follow up as many leads as you can. Again, the attention to detail is important because it's a part of the world that you're creating. And James Joyce, in his book Ulysses, is actually a very wonderful example of detail. The whole book takes place, I think, in one day. And there's one chapter that's actually one sentence, which is really, really interesting. So go be honest what you write. And if you start with a conflict, the character being, you know, between two chairs, you know, he's between his job and his girlfriend, or he's between, you know, his best friend and a very important assignment. You know, he has to choose between the sides. And then, of course, you know, the character has to choose. Excuse me. The character has to choose between sides, or he has to decide what he wants, you know, because we all want, when we read stories, to see a character that is true to himself and wants to do the right thing, but through circumstance, of course, gets to, you know, choose the good side and actually learn something, because I believe that the whole world is reflective. I'm very much a quantum physicist, that what we are feeling, what we are actually internalizing and thinking and feeling actually gets projected back to us. So we live in a very reflective environment, a reflective world. And we want our heroes, we want to learn from our heroes. And art, painting, writing, singing, acting, all of it is actually at the very, very center level, it's something where people want to see their own problems objectively on the stage or in the canvas of a story or art or painting or whatever, to be able to learn from it, because we're all too close to our problems. We're all too close to, to what we, to where we are. And so if we see it objectively on a stage or a screen or in a story, we can actually solve our own problems in a better way. So that's the philosophical standpoint. I'm a singer as well, and I'm an actor, and I'm a teacher. I teach acting and singing. And when I do that, interpretation, I love teaching interpretation, then I try to tell my students to, try to think where the song that they're singing or where the monologue that they're speaking, what that has to do with their own life, and where they can see the mirror to their own life in the songs that they're singing. And also the attention. I say stage presence is actually attention. Because if you are attention, if you're smelling, hearing, seeing, feeling much, much deeper or in detail, you're actually, regarding your own regarder. You're just trying to be more attentive to where you are and who you are and what you're feeling. If you do that in a story, it's enormously effective. And mix that with the right mood music, then you've already avoided Harry the Explainer. How are things happening, as opposed to why are they happening? And, in the middle of an action, in the middle of this drama that's being created, a situation, then if you start a story that way, in the middle of the action, then you've already got the reader's attention, and you're not revealing everything. There's a question. And the reader is actually discovering the question, or discovering the answer as they go along. We have a situation like that in Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, where the story literally starts at like an end of a big adventure. Indiana Jones coming to this club, an unusual factor being, Kate Capshaw singing, singing Anything Goes in Chinese, and this Chinese mafia leader, Lao Che, all that, you already have the reader's attention when you're telling that story, because it's like this. First of all, Anything Goes in Chinese is really weird, so you can start with something usual in an unusual way. That's a good tip. When you turn something on its head, you keep the reader's attention, you keep the reader guessing, and you introduce something ordinary in an extraordinary way. That's also Stephen King's wonderful, wonderful tip. When you read his books, you have these English teachers. He was an English, or he's an academically educated English teacher. So a lot of his characters are English teachers, and they're all pretty ordinary guys. But they, there's something extremely extraordinary that happens in their lives. Like the guy that travels back in time and tries to, prevent Kennedy's murder. He finds this time portal in the back of a bar. Or like Louis Creed in Pet Sematary, this ordinary guy in the countryside finds this pet cemetery that actually, when you bury, pets there, they actually come back from the dead, but they're, with a sort of an evil twist. And he, of course, if you read the book, that he, buries his wife there, and there's an open end, so you take something ordinary and you make it extraordinary. And it's surprising. That's a very surprising way to do that. The red thread, not only the details, the music, the mood, the feelings, the why, not the how, those are important things, The other thing is a red thread, that you have a red thread in a story, and that all the things that you introduce, you somehow solve at the end. There's nothing untied knots or something. The red thread is also important, that you focus on one agenda. In my story, Tabula Rasa, which I also, put in Poets Unplugged, there you have two agendas. It's Kenny trying to, solve the fact that he doesn't know where to go without his Dora, and that Dora was actually the inspiration for his character in his success. So actually, the success of his teenage novels was actually Dora's. The reason was Dora, because without Dora, he wouldn't have had the success, because she was the inspiration for the main character in his novels. So he doesn't care about Evelyn. He doesn't care about the main character in his teenage novels. He was a workaholic, and he sent away Dora, and that's his problem. So I've established right in the very beginning that his, he has a big problem. He doesn't, he has this wonderful life because of his girlfriend, but she's gone. And his attention to detail is actually a very good plus and a bonus actually there, because he sees the nature, he sees the geese, and he sees the reflection in the water, and it's all of this. But basically, he says if a journalist came by and took a picture of him, he's like, they would see a lost man. So, and at the very, very end, he just goes to the water and he says, well, the water's his only friend. Well, how it ends, you'll have to read. But, set the mood and be true to your emotions. Those are important things. And focus on one agenda. There's one thing. It's what Alfred Hitchcock called a MacGuffin. It's like Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. You have one thing that everybody is searching for. In Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, it's the Grail. And it drives the whole story. In the Lord of the Rings, it's the rings, of course. Harry Potter, of course, it's Harry Potter himself and his, the search to confront and vanquish Voldemort. That drives the whole story. In Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, it's the chakras, the Shankara stones, I think it's called. And you can also take something that's happened in your life, in your personal life, and turn it into a short story. You can have a dramatic situation that you had in your life and turn it into a science fiction story. You can make the breakup that you had, a queen leaving a king, and the whole, your personal universe, the micro universe being an actual macro universe, a kingdom, and the whole kingdom is in uproar because the queen left the king and he's alone in the castle, and the king is turned into a drunk animal. And you can also have these mythical situations. You can create your own situation and turn it into a science fiction novel. Or a fantasy novel in that case. You have something unusual in something or extraordinary in the ordinary. What I also like is mixing genres. I like that. Not only posing something, turning something on its head. Like have some people see things from a completely different light, but you have a vampire character in a science fiction place, or you can actually mix. I like that sometimes. Having an erotic story that actually takes place in outer space, or you can have a romantic story between ghosts, or you can have a funny story between monsters. Those are genre things, but of course, if you want a real dramatic, character-driven thing, that romantic or that dramatic character-driven thing has to be honest And it's best if you write what you know. You can also turn it into a different thing. You can, turn it on its head. But make it your story, and attention to detail. And also the red thread, situation driven, character driven, and remember to have a red thread in the whole story. Those were some pointers from my point, from my perspective, and I hope that some of these things helped you, and drove you forward to creating wonderful, great stories. Sort of like the painting that I painted here in the background. It's a pyramid in a world with 3 moons. Sort of like Stargate, where do the pyramids come from? You're asking the question, you can paint a picture, an ordinary picture, something that we all know, and you actually put it on a different planet. And that alone is a surprising image, and keep the reader inspired. Read a lot, write a lot, but write what inspires you, and the more it inspires you, the more you're inspired when you're writing, the more chance you will have to inspire your readers. That's the basic things. That's actually the very, very center of everything. If you're inspired, if you love what you do and love what you write, then you will most certainly, inspire your readers. I'll be doing a poetry class in the next few days. And I thank you very much. And also thank you so much, Sophia Behal and Poets Unplugged, for inviting me to do this little writing class. Feel blessed, feel inspired, feel creative, this is a reflective world. We are 99.9999% empty space, and the whole universe is 0.011% vibrating matter. So, nothing, the only thing that makes it real is the love that you feel within your heart and how inspired you feel. That's the actual center of the whole universe. And reality is what we make it. And art and creativity are actually at the very center of everything. So feel proud that you are a person that loves to create, because what you create, you give from your emotions into the world, and you inspire other people. And so we're actually light bringers, and our emotions and our love are lights in the world, because our inspired activity, our inspiration actually transports through our subatomic energy to other people. And we bring hope to the world by our art and our creations. With those inspiring words, I bid you adieu for tonight, and hope that you enjoyed my little writing class. And I bless you all, and I will see you next time in my poetry class. Take good care, and look at this video again, write and jot down the details, and I look forward to reading your great and inspiring stories. Nighty night.